live.
Yes. Last time we did this was last summer. That's right. I'm sorry, it's pretty joking. You know what,
Yeah, okay, I'm done. Hey everybody, welcome back to Matt and Robin. If you can see, Robin has changed a little bit today. For whatever reason, Robin has difficulty managing his calendar. But I only gave him like a week notice, so hey, it happens. Today we have Kyle McKay, who's one of our SEs out of Alberta in Calgary. And so we're going to be rolling through this today together. Do this. Kyle also has a show, and I'm going to put the show notes after, where he does some YouTube stuff around. What is it called again, Kyle?
My show is called A Slice of Security. It's a show where my guest and I, we enjoy a slice of pizza, and we talk about a cybersecurity themed topic. It's a lot of fun, and my second episode is actually getting released next week.
Cool. So I'm going to post that in the show notes too, and you can go and watch it, subscribe to it. This is just how we as a group of people that work in this industry are trying to share content and information. And this is like typically agnostic kind of thing that we do. So we're trying to just blast out kind of different kind of content that is industry interesting, and can kind of tie back to what we do. So anyways, so we do have a special guest with us this week too, to talk about something super interesting too. This is a guy I know through my gym. He's going to deny this, but he is probably one of the strongest guys I roll with. He beats my ass on a regular basis. We train jiu-jitsu together. And he's also a criminal lawyer. And we kind of started up a conversation about some of the things that he did, and he came across on the tech perspective. He says, do you know anything about this? And I'm like, well, I've heard about Pegasus, but mostly as the spyware that people put on people's computers. It's like, oh, yeah, we're dealing with it right now. So I was like, oh, I know that I would love to hear his perspective on how he goes through these things. Anyway, so we're going to get to that too. He also is a published author. He's laughing right now, probably. He's like, oh, Matt, you're such an idiot. But he has a book. This is the most expensive book I've ever seen too. I tried to buy it and he wouldn't let me. But anyways, he's a published author and also martial arts expert. So I'm also going to show a little like B-roll here from a TV spot that he does too. He does a lot of talking to the media too. So I'm going to pop this in here. We'll just give it like a 10-second listen.
And that's basically because these two are being tried together.
With conspiracy, right? So a conspiracy is an agreement between two parties to affect an unlawful object, right? So if you convict one and acquit the other in a two-party conspiracy, how is such a thing possible? You can't have a one-person agreement. I always agree with myself, right? It's impossible to reach an agreement by one person. You need an agreement between two people.
So there's also a part I had to, I'm just going to bring him in here too. So let's roll in. This is Craig Bottomley. Craig, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
Craig?
Who was that young man in the clip with no gray beard? That is startling.
I felt like I picked one of the ones where I tried to make it look as handsome as possible. I also had the headshot I put on for this too. I'm like, he looks kind of like he's got his COVID hair going. I tried to get your one that you have on your website too. I'm like, this guy looks like a terrifying badass dude that I can be like, I'm not worried about this guy kicking my ass. But he still does, regardless how he looks. The other thing on that video too, there's this one part and the interviewer says to you, well, why can't you just do this? And you just giggle at her. I'm like, yeah, well, because that's not how it works. Why can't they just kind of flip a coin? I forget what it was, but anyways, I thought it was super funny. So Craig, welcome to the show. If you could kind of do like a little, like, who is Craig? And
aside from the gross exaggerations of my martial arts prowess that you've already made, I am a criminal lawyer. I've been practicing criminal law for about 18 years. I'm the principal at a firm called Bottomley Barristers, where I have a number of talented young lawyers who make me look better than I really am on a regular basis. I do a lot of trials and appeals, mostly specializing in criminal organization work. So I do a lot of work for traditional organized crime groups as well as biker groups and street gangs. And the reason I do that is because there's a lot of interesting charter work, a lot of civil rights issues that come up on a regular basis, and you get to litigate those for people who might ordinarily be somewhat unsympathetic to your average individual. But I subscribe to the idea that the true measure of a society is how well do you treat the worst members of the society, or the lowest position members of the society. So that's who I am and what I do.
Cool. And so basically what we talk about on our show too, in Kyle's, I've seen some of the episodes. I hope he has anyways. I'd be embarrassed if he's not, but whatever. One of the things we talk about is like the tech and how it relates to different people and different people experience this. And you and I are having a conversation, Craig, about some spyware. And I'm like, I know spyware. And I'm going to just cut to one other thing too. I'm going to show my screen quick here too. We're going to jump off this home. And here's the software we were talking about. This is a quick Google search found me. Is targeted iOS spyware. What you need to know to protect your organization for Pegasus and Tread. I'm like, this is known spyware that they're warning organizations as a CIO or C-level leader of these organizations to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. There's also different organizations too that kind of been touted about what you need to know or the research they've done around it. So I'm from Toronto, and Craig and I are both from Toronto too. And we have a U of T, a huge contributor, which I'm proud to say they're from Toronto, to the security industry. And they've gone back and they've been one of the contributors to the security industry and research about what's good and bad and how to deal with it from the very beginning, early 90s, late 80s, about the beginning of what this is. And I was just wondering, Craig, if you could kind of, start with kind of like, what is your experience about how the police are using these types of tools to monitor or watch us online?
So there's sort of two big developments in the last few years. One is something called Stingray, or a cell site simulator, which you may have heard of. And this is like a device. It's a box that has a bunch of dials and knobs on it. But what it does is it simulates a cell tower. So the police use this ostensibly to let's say you want to get a warrant for Craig Bottomley, but you don't know what cell phone number he's using or how many cell phones he has. So you go outside of the home address you've got for Craig Bottomley in your RCMP unmarked van, and you turn on the cell site simulator, and every cell phone within the active radius of this Stingray, as it's colloquially known, it's like the brand name. It's like Kleenex to tissue. So the Stingray will attract the signal, and your cell phone will ping off the nearest cell phone tower every few seconds. That's how you know if you've got a text message. And so all of those signals for the time that the Stingray is active will go to this site simulator, and it will provide what's called an IMEI number, an IMSI number, these two sort of biographical numbers for the device to the operator, and they'll get this long list of IMEI numbers or IMSI numbers. And with these numbers, they'll then follow Craig Bottomley to his workplace one day, and they'll run the same test again, and they get another list, and presumably the number that shows up on both lists. They're like, okay, now we know which number Craig Bottomley is using. And that's fine, except that for the entire time they're running it, no one's cell phone will work in the area. And there are different levels that the police can use as to whether or not they're intercepting communications using this, if they're locating exact targets for this, like where someone is geographically. And the last time I encountered one of these, the police in their affidavit to the judge, because the way a search warrant works is you have to submit an affidavit to a judge and say, here's what we want to do, here's why we want to do it, and here's what we think it'll turn up evidence of. And when they were applying for these authorizations to use Stingrays, they would say, here's what we want to do, here are the sort of dangers of this device. We're going to attract everyone's name and everyone's information, not everyone's name, but everyone's information, their IMEI number and their IMSI number, and their cell phones are going to stop working. So we promise we're only going to use it for 3 minutes at a time and then turn it off for a rest period and then turn it back on. And then fast forward to now, I'm involved in a case right now where the police are using this and they haven't told the judge what it can do and what the ramifications are. They're just like, we're going to use a cell site simulator and we'll use it for as little time as we think is reasonable. And the judge has signed off on this. So they're sort of not telling the judge everything it can do before the judge is authorizing the use of this device. And even if you think that's not so bad, they're using this in conjunction with something they've termed ODIT, or an on-device investigative tool, ODIT. And I don't know that this is Pegasus, but after speaking to the group you referred to at U of T is Citizen Lab. And I believe what they're using is something called Pegasus, which was this spyware device developed. And then what I hear is it was initially sold to sort of countries with a less great track record for human rights abuses and, using it to spy on the citizens. And what it is once they deploy this ODIT onto your device, and the way they do this is, I'm told, they wait, and I think it's probably done in combination with a cell site simulator and the program. And so when you try to access any website from your phone, instead of going to the cell tower, it'll go to a Stingray, which will then be used to upload this program onto your phone or this app onto your phone. And Pegasus basically tracks every single thing that happens on your phone. So if you call your romantic partner, that call can be intercepted. If you're sending text messages, that can be intercepted. Maybe no big deal because the police probably have a warrant if you're the target of an investigation for that anyway. But every app you access, every social media thing you access, every screenshot you take, any photograph you take, any message you send, and it has a keystroke logging feature. So if you use the Scotiabank app and go to Scotiabank and then type in your password, the police have got that too. Or if you go to your dating profile and type in your password, the police have got that as well. And you would be rightly horrified at that point if I said that's all it can do. You're like, Jesus Christ, that's a pretty big invasion.
Yeah.
But the real terror of this to me is that the police can activate the microphone on your device, and they can get this onto a laptop, they can get this onto a cell phone, activate the microphone and record any conversation that happens proximate to the microphone. So it really is the stuff of like a Will Smith movie, right? Like it's enemy of the state stuff.
Right.
And I honestly, like, going forward, when I'm looking at this, I really question whether or not a judge should even have the power in the absence of explicit parliamentary guidance, like a law that says you can do this. I'm not sure a judge should even be allowed to grant access to this. So, and I'm quite frankly not, we'll see where it ends up, but that's what we're going to be fighting about when this case finally goes to trial.
That's crazy, man. I remember I used to have a role where I would advise organizations and customers on how to manage and set up and run security. And I remember getting that conversation of, listen, we want to get this, we want to buy this device that'll shut down cell service. And we were like, no. I went to the police and we checked this out. And that's illegal. You're not allowed to do that. That's against the law.
There's federal communications regulations that wouldn't allow anyone to have a Stingray, much less import one even into the country. And yet every police service seems to have it. And it, like, they covered up that they had these for a long time. There was an article in the Globe and Mail about a year ago where police services were like fessing up. They're like, yeah, we do have this thing. And yeah, I know we said we didn't, but we've got it.
I can see some practical use cases for it, obviously, right? Like from a pure criminal investigation. But if you tack that on to what you just mentioned, the ODIT or ODT, I mean, that's a very clear invasion at that point, right? We're tacking on only the ability to intercept and now potentially, throw a fraudulent or a fake page or a fake download that now your phone or your laptop or whatever it is downloading something that obviously is not legitimate for further investigation by that criminal or the police or the government or whatever it ends up being. That's a pretty significant thing.
what's crazy to me is so I reached out to a very just a brilliant lawyer by the name of Gerald Chan. He's really up on privacy stuff, and he's just a great guy. And I reach out to him and I say, what do you think about this? And he goes, who you should contact is Citizen Lab. And I reach out to Citizen Lab, and Citizen Lab says, hey, have you heard of this case? And they send it back to me, and it's a reported decision. And Matthew, I can send it later to you if you want. But the CSIS has this device, has this technology. And with this technology, they're looking at it, and they're going after what they describe in the case as a suspected Islamic terrorist. And with this goal in mind, they have this technology. They want to use it, but even CSIS, who they've had maybe not the most stellar track record when it comes to civil liberties. Sometimes even CSIS looked at this and went, "Geez, this seems a little risky. Before we use this, we better make a reference case to the federal court." And so they appoint sort of a lawyer to argue against them. They hire a legitimate defense lawyer to argue against their position, and they say to the judge, "Hey, we want to use this, but we recognize there might be some charter implications." And the lawyer stands up and says, "Yeah, I think the Charter of Rights and Freedoms might be impinged by using this thing." And the federal court went, "Yeah, this looks a little risky. Why don't we put some limitations on its use?" And that's how CSIS got to use it in this case against this suspected terrorist. And then fast forward, a year and a half, and this case I've been referencing, it's a gambling case. It's a criminal organization case, but it's a gambling case at the end of it, running books and that sort of thing. And the OPP just basically went to a judge and said, "Can we use this thing?" And the judge, "Yeah, it's fine." So without limitation and without the forbearance of even CSIS on this. So maybe they were right. We're going to litigate it at some point, and maybe I'll report back and said, "Yeah, judge said it's fine. They did what they were supposed to do. It's no problem." But it seems to me, and I'm, criminal lawyers are sort of the line where the state gets pushed back against civil rights infringements. But my instincts as a criminal lawyer are, geez, this seems pretty problematic.
Right. That's very, this is unreal too. I feel like I don't ever get the opportunity to kind of hear this kind of side of the story. Well, except for on Fridays when I'm watching Netflix with my wife. But I'm like, this is kind of enthralling thing. This is what guys like Kyle and myself talk about all the time when we hear about, but we talk about, oh no, you can't use this. This is what the hackers do. This is what the bad guys are doing to infiltrate you and your organization. So it's funny, but I guess the state, exactly.
The reason you don't hear about it is because every time I try to talk to you about it, you're trying to choke the life out of me.
I gotta survive, buddy. I gotta survive. You know how it is. But I feel like when we have these conversations, it's the other way around. But the one thing that we always say, it's great to have the key to the unlockable door. But if you have a key and can use it, that means every single other person, good or nefarious or whatever, can use that same thing. And that's the kind of argument that comes up in our business too, is what is the right or what is wrong? Or if the good guys have the key, do you know what that means? The bad guys can get the key, or who is the good and bad, I guess, is the more relevant conversation these days too, of this.
And what's interesting, sort of from a technological point of view, is once people started developing Stingrays, once the company that makes Stingray made Stingray, there was almost immediately, and we've seen, I've seen professionally people on the other end of this develop Stingray blockers. So there's for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah. So, while you're developing this technology, where it started probably is, the police say, "Wow, wiretapping. This is fantastic. Mm-hmm. We're getting all sorts of information." I'll tell you, wiretaps are disastrous to my success rate.
Develops.
Right? So once they've got the wiretap, then someone develops PGP, right? They develop this pretty good protection stuff, and then they develop that, and they can't figure out who's got what cell phone, and they're like, okay, well, we better build a Stingray, and then someone says, oh, you're building a Stingray, we're going to build a counter, and they're like, oh yeah, well, we're going to develop Pegasus. So it's a real. escalating battle.
I have some buddies you know too, Craig, and they used to. I used to get these weird questions like, "Hey, Tifa, I know your security. What can I do about getting rid of or deleting all my text messages on the telecoms?" I'm like, "You are talking to the wrong person."
It's amazing. Whenever I have like a homicide trial, the police can always go back and find like every text message this guy has sent for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
But when I'm trying to get like an in-car camera recording of, you know, my young black man getting pulled over by the cops, they're like, "Oh yeah, we can't access it. The technology is just not there."
Well, hey, that's a different organization. That's the telecoms, right? And the telecoms hold and store all that information, right?
For a long time, yeah, longer than they would have you believe.
Yeah. So, and I guess I can't make any comment to how they act or what they do, but I think that they want to do the right thing. So
sure,
when law enforcement comes and kind of engages them, they want to make sure that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, Rogers, like 2 or 3 years ago, the police, I think it was Peel Regional Police, went to Rogers and said, "Hey, we want a tower dump of all this information." And Rogers went, "That seems offside," and said, "We're going to bring this to a court and get some guidance." And the court said, "Yeah, you absolutely can't do this." Yeah. And it was only because Rogers stood up, and each telecommunications provider now has like a liaison where they have to determine whether or not they're going to cooperate with police requests just when they're a request, as opposed to when the police get a production order or a warrant. So some hope.
Cool. Hey, so anyways, this is so cool. I like to go on and on about this, but I also like to make this short and consumable. So if there is updates and you and I are talking, Craig, I'm going to figure out a way to get you back here. I'm also going to let you know how I can make sure I can ship some of that beer. So during COVID, you're not going to go dry, which is one of the things we talk about. But thank you very much for doing this. Kyle, too.
An absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Kyle,
that was great, Craig. You know, it's pretty obvious just from my perspective. I'm obviously not a lawyer. I don't practice law. But just listening to you, you're obviously really well versed and well educated in this topic. So for me, it was a great learning experience just hearing what you had to say. So hopefully the viewers feel the same.
No, check back in a year after this trial's done. I'll let you know what happened.
Awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. Kyle, everybody, we are out of here.